Well, Huseyin Alptekin is an assistant professor at Istanbul Sehir University. He joins me now live in the studio for more on Operation Euphrates Shield, 1 year on. Thanks so much for coming in. Bring us back to why Turkey decided it was actually necessary to launch such an immense operation.
Actually, the paramount driving force for Turkey to engage in this military operation was one single reason. It was security. And we can take it actually in two dimensions. On the one hand, it was a clear border security problem, as Daesh was launching mortar shells toward Turkish border, across Turkish border, almost on a daily basis. So Turkey needed to clean off the border from the Daesh threat. That was the first dimension. And beyond that, and perhaps even a bigger dimension to that security problem, was the broader humanitarian crisis, the broader humanitarian security problem that was making a huge impact, not only in Syria or Turkey, but in the broader region. So Turkey intervened. Turkey started this military engagement as a response to these two security threats.
Okay. The area is more secure. But have all the goals of the operation been met? And especially when we hear refugees saying they don't want to return home, has it been inarguably successful?
I would argue that the operation was successful, given the stated purposes of the operation, which was on the one hand to clean off the border from the Daesh threat and to create a security zone, and also to preempt and prevent a PKK corridor across the border. And if you look at these three stated goals at the time expressed by the President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and also the Minister of Foreign Affairs Mevlut Çavuşoğlu, I think these first imminent purposes of the operation right now are complete. But is it necessary? Is it sufficient? If you look at that, yes, they were necessary steps. But I would say it's not sufficient at the moment, because the security zone now is not completely secure. It's not a huge area. When we look at from the east to the west, what we see is a 90-kilometer long and a 30 kilometers wide area, which is functioning now with a hospital, with police headquarters, and with Turkish humanitarian aid organizations functioning there. But still, there are certain threat sources that are not very far from the area.
How long do you foresee Turkish troops on the ground then in Syria?
It's very hard to predict from now. But if you look at the situation in Syria now, especially in that pocket from Jarablus, Azaz, and Al-Bab, I would say that until the Syrian crisis has a final resolution, until there is certain guarantees that we will no longer see terror attacks coming from across the border, until we are sure that there will be no further mortar shellings in Turkish territories, the Turkish troops, I believe, will stay there.
So they will stay. What about the wider strategy for Turkey in Syria? Is it clear? And do you also foresee the kind of cooperation Turkey would need in order to manage its security operations there with perhaps the United States and other international players on the ground?
Actually, the operation started in August 2016, and the very first day of the operation, at the time, the Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden, supported the Turkish operation there, and he also justified the operation based on the Article 51 of UN Charter, Chapter 7. So there was cooperation from the onset. And plus, we can, I guess, predict that it will be very difficult for Turkish military operation to be carried out without coordination with Russian and American forces, without intelligence sharing, without opening some space for each other's operations in the region. So for the long-term Turkish strategy in Syria, I would say that I believe Turkey seems to be committed and dedicated to keep a foot on the ground so that it can have a say, it can have a word for the future process of the crisis. And as we saw before the operation, it wasn't possible. Okay. What we saw before the operation was Turkey had certain handicaps, certain barriers to see what was going on there. So with the operation, this was possible, and I believe Turkey will stay there for the foreseeable future until we see the light at the end of the tunnel, until we are pretty much sure that the crisis is not that tense, that intense anymore.
Okay. Huseyin Alptekin, thank you so much for coming and sharing your analysis.